So the Instrument Saich has a few interesting features that make it a great module for creating chords and pads. First of all, it's a quad saw oscillator, so it's basically 4 oscillators in one. We can also listen to this. Now each oscillator has a dedicated volt per octave input, so I can use different notes to create chords. And it has also an internal VCA with different modes, so it's possible to morph and switch between the 4 oscillators internally, and you can see this here. And again, there are different modes that we will explore later on, and more interesting features. So let's really start creating some sounds. I have here something prepared. So I have here the Nutrinode sequencer. It's basically 4 sequences that will run more or less randomly and will generate pitch information according to the nodes, as you can see here. Let's send this to the volt per octave inputs of Saich 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we get chords. Maybe I'll just take the levels a bit down. So this is what we get. Now maybe we can filter this, just shape the sound a bit. So I will use Freq from Volt, which is a stereo filter, and I will use both channels, left and right, and send them to the mixer. Let's unmute this now. Freq is also available in hardware, by the way. Let's do something like this. Now we can modulate the cutoff point of each channel separately, the left and the right. So I will use Oct also from Instruo. And first of all, I will change this here, the modulation routing to individual, so I can modulate each channel by itself. And let's take the frequency a bit down, and I will modulate A and B with 2 different outputs. So now we get nice stereo movement. Let's add a nice amount of send reverb as well. I have here plateau as a send reverb. And now let's have a look at the internal VCA. So we have a few modes. As you can see here, it's called Mix Profiles. Let's go with constant root. So now the first oscillator will always play, and we can morph with this slider between the other 3 oscillators. And again, you can see the movement here. You can see oscillator 1 is always on. So let's really modulate this also with Oct. Let's go with the slower modulation, and I will open the attenuator all the way. You can see it here, how it moves. Now another thing we can do to add more space is sending this to another VCA, an external VCA. Let's take the drive a bit down. So this is Punch, a stereo VCA also from Volt. And I will use an AD envelope to open this VCA. Let's use Oct to trigger this envelope, so whenever the LFO goes above a certain point, it will trigger this envelope, set a nice attack and decay times. Something like this, and then this we can send to a delay. I will use Chronoglobe 2. I will change this mode here, so when I change the delay times it will not glitch. And now let's send the voice to Chronoglobe. Change the delay time for the right channel, maybe a ping pong delay, a bit less wet and a bit more feedback. change the delay time, something like this. So we have nice chords with lots and lots of movement. We can add also a bass to this. I have here a few modules ready. I have the note sequencer from JW. This is sequencing the TSL, which I am mixing with the VCV mixer. A few of its waveforms. I'm using again a filter and also chorus. And I have here also Basil from Volt as a sub oscillator. Yes. Okay, now we can also create chords with only one sequencer thanks to the built-in diatonic mode. So here I have the grid sequencer from JW. It's already going to the volt per octave input of the first oscillator. And this input is normaled to the other three oscillators, so they all play the same pitch. I can demonstrate this. Right, they're all playing the same pitch, but now we can change the intervals of each oscillator by adding offset to them. So let's select the intervallic offset mode by clicking the control button, this button here, and then it turns white. And we can change the offset of the oscillators. They will be octaves and fifths apart with this slider here. But we can take this even further and have them play chords diatonically. So let's activate the diatonic mode in the right-click menu. It's here. And now we send the same sequence, a copy of the sequence to this CV input. Again, just a copy of this sequence. And by turning this attenuverter to the right, we will get chords in the major scale. And by turning it to the left, we get chords in the minor scale. And now the chords will be diatonic, they will be a part of the minor scale, and we have chords from one sequence or one sequencer. Now we cannot use the internal VCA at this point, so let's send Saich to an external VCA. We'll use the VCA from VCV. And maybe also a bandpass filter. In this case, I will use tangents from Volt. Again, the bandpass filter. And I will use an AD envelope and attack decay envelope to open the VCA, and the triggers will come from the sequencer. And let's run the sequencer with a divided clock. I have here a clock divided by 4, so this will go to the random input, so we get random chords. Let's have a listen to this. Now we can add probability to the notes with this button here. It will randomize the probability per step. The probability, so now it will sometimes play and sometimes not. Let's make this a few more times, something like this. And now, to add even more interest to the sound, we can add chronoblob 2, again a delay. In this case, I will sync it with the clock and maybe change this to a ping pong delay. A bit less sweat, a bit more feedback, and maybe somewhere here. And let's change this mode here, the time modulation mode. so it's not glitching when we will change later on the delay times. So now let's do this. Let's send this to the mixer. Very nice. And now let's add some movement to the filter and to the delay times with sample and hold. I will use the sample and hold from Bog Audio. And again, I will trigger it with the sequencer. And we will use this once to the filter. This will change the cutoff point of the filter. And also to the delay times of the delay. Something like this. Bit more feedback. This one here. Very nice. Bit more center. Now let's put this in context and add some drums and a bass. I have here the gate sequencer from Impromptu, sequencing a bass drum from Plats, and hi-hats from Hora, and the snare drum from Proc. And I have here the note sequencer also from JW, sequencing a sort of an FM voice with two FM bass with two FM operators. Another great way for creating chords with Saich is with the help of Harmonig, also from Instruo. I have here a simple sequence with the ADDR sequencer, and Harmonig is sending a 7th chord into Saich. I'm also using random voltage to modulate the inversion and voicing of Harmonig, so there's movement to the chords. This is going to the 1047 filter also from Instruo, and I have an LFO controlling the cutoff point through the FM input. And the interesting thing here is that I have an envelope controlling or changing the rate of this LFO. So let's have a listen to how it sounds like. With every trigger for the envelope, the rate of the LFO will go up and gradually down. So this is the effect it's giving. I also have here an LFO modulating the panning for this voice. So again, we can create chords with only one sequence thanks to Harmonig. And this works really well also in hardware, by the way. Now we can set the first oscillator of Saich to a sub-oscillator pulse wave with auto pulse width modulation. So it will add also lots of movement to this oscillator. And this we can do by clicking the sub button, this sub button here, until it will blink here, sort of amber or orange, white, and this one. So now we get also a sub-oscillator, a pulse wave sub-oscillator with internal pulse width modulation. And we can add even more movement by modulating the internal VCA. So let's in this case go to a different mode. Let's select odds and evens. So it will morph between oscillator 1 and 3. and to the right it will be oscillator 2 and 4, and again oscillator 1 in this case, you can hear it, it's a sub-oscillator. So let's take this again to the center and use the same LFO with this movement to modulate this VCA. You can see this here. Something I really like doing is sending the high frequencies to a delay. So I have here Lala from Studio 6+1. It's set to about 1000 Hertz, and then I can choose to have what's above 1000 or what's below. I take the higher frequencies, what's above 1000 Hertz, and send it to Chronoblob 2 to a delay. So only the high frequencies will go to the delay. This is how it will sound like. Something like this, it adds lots and lots of texture. And again, also to this we can add some bass and some drums. So I have here the modulo sequencer. Let me just reset this just in case. The modulo sequencer sequencing another Saich. In this case I'm using it as a sort of a bass through the bass module from Autin. And I have here Thorns, which is an overdrive module from Flag, so this is how it will sound like. And also here I'm sending the high frequencies to a delay. So I can do this. And I have also some drums here. I have again the gate sequencer sequencing once a kick drum with knock from Volt, and the snare from SV Modular and some hi-hats. So here I'm creating a nice lush pad, again with Harmonic, but here I'm doing something you cannot do in hardware. I have it set to performance mode, so it creates chords by itself, and I'm sequencing this with 8-phase from Sturmelder, so I have a few snapshots of Harmonic saved. Again, you cannot do this in hardware, but you can do this in VCV, so why not? This is, again, sequencing Saich. I also add a bit of random modulation to the FM just to make this a bit more detuned. It's going through two separate filters, one to the left and one to the right. I have here Oct adding movement to the cutoff point of the filters and the resonance. This is going through a VCA like we've seen before and the delay, but it's going also through a 100% reverb with plateau. And I'm also sending all of this through another VCA because I'm side chaining this with an inverted envelope that we will see soon enough with what. You can guess it with the kick drum, of course. So let's have a listen to this. You can hear the side chaining. But also this really nice, crunchy, pad-like sound. Here there's another way you can add or create pads and chords, more pads actually. I have here another Saich, again getting pitch information from Harmonic, but in this case it's set to the voice up mix profile. So the VCA is in voice up mode, and as you can see here the movement, it's moving or arpeggiating between the oscillators, and I'm using here Oct to do this, to create this movement. So it's arpeggiating the voices. This is going through a filter, and I have here the vector mixer from Nischi, which I'm using to add movement left and right, and also to the level, to the amplitude. And what makes this a nice pad is the Supermassive from Valhalla. I have the mix all the way up, so even though it's arpeggiating the voices, what we get is a nice lush pad to sound like this. This is just this pad. Let's wait for it. So it adds another layer. Now here up I have a sort of a carpless strong voice. I have white noise going through a bandpass filter, and I have a really short envelope triggering this voice or opening this voice, the VCA for this voice. So it's just a burst of noise going to a short delay with high feedback. It sounds like this. Just adds atmosphere to everything. And here I have the drums. I have one gate sequencer triggering knock as a kick drum, another gate sequencer triggering snare, the snare from SV Modular. I have the snare going also, a copy of the snare going to a delay, and I'm mixing a copy of the bass drum and a copy of the snare with the VCV mixer, and this is going to the lovely Rampage for some extra crunch. So this is how it will sound like. Let's wait for it now. Just like this. And again, this pad is sidechain to the kick. One more time because it's fun. Very nice. So as you can see, Saich can be great for creating all sorts of chords and pads. There's lots more to explore with it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Cheers.